One of the wildest, most exciting things about the age that we live in is that we can communicate with people over long distances, often using tools like Zoom or Riverside.fm, and we can speak to potential customers and clients using more than just our words and our facial features. Indeed, we've got to a point where we can introduce tools such as diagrams, visual models. We can now draw on the screen. It's a really exciting time to be in a business where you need to communicate complex messages. Now, this is not easy for everyone. Indeed, it's a new skill that many of us have had to learn as business owners, including me, which is why I'm so thrilled to have our guest today, because our guest is the founder of the Models Method. He is the creator of the Genius Model. If you've never heard of that, you've definitely seen it. And he's my go-to guy when I want to take a complex concept or product and turn it into a visual model that future customers and clients can easily understand and even resonate with sometimes emotionally. His name is Simon Bowen, and welcome to my podcast, mate.
Thanks, James. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Now, just before we hit record, I actually did say I'm a little bit nervous about my intro because Simon's a little bit of an idol of mine. And that is because I was trying to find ways to communicate complex models, and I developed my own little method. Indeed, I was teaching my own little method. And then as I went out and I looked and I tried to get a little bit better, I stumbled into the world of Dan Martell, and I saw his visual model, and I went, what a great visual model, and I reverse engineered it. And then I stumbled into the world of Taki, and I went, that guy's really good at his models, and I started to reverse engineer his models. And then I was doing a presentation one day, running through my variation of a bunch of models, and someone said, oh, so you've done some training with Simon Bowen, hey? And I went, no, who's this guy? And I tracked you down, and then I saw your training with Dan Martell. I think I may have also seen your training with Taki. How did you get into this world where you create visual models for complex services for people that are quite literally, they are the doyens, they are the gurus of the online industry?
Yes. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I grew up in really small country towns in Western Australia, and when I say small, I mean 400 people, 900 people, and from a very large family. My father's one of 10. I have 45 first cousins on his side of the family, and they're all farmers, and farmers draw in the dirt a lot. Well, they say you need to go down to the other gate, and they'll draw the track you've got to go on to get there in the dirt, and assume you've locked it into your brain, and then they kick it away and scrub it over, or my father would be going to build something. He's very handy. He could build anything, and he would scratch it out on a piece of paper first, not architecturally designed or anything, but he'd scratch out on a piece of paper first. And then I started my working life in electrics and electronics, and I'm 62, so back then it was really at the real start of electronics in the transport industry, which is where I worked. And so we were designing electronic circuit boards to fit. One of my jobs was to hide the flashing lights and the radio equipment on deep cover police vehicles, so that the criminal could get into the car and not know it was a police car, but the officer still had access to radios and sirens and lights and everything else. And so we were trying to miniaturize and hide, and so we were creating circuit boards and everything else. And to do anything in the electrical world, you have to draw a circuit diagram. And I suppose it just shaped my brain, but the metaphysics of everything that you and I are sitting in front of at the moment, James, the computers, the tables, everything, the metaphysics of all of these devices is that they went from an idea in the head, firstly to a drawing on paper, then they became real. So most things that humans do have their first iteration in the physical world as a drawing of some form. They're never just a list of words describing it. You could never get it done. Imagine going to an architect and saying, to a builder and saying, hey, listen, I want to spend $1 million, build me a house. They'd say, no, we need drawings, and people, 10% of the cost of your house should go to the architect, right, to get great drawings because the house depends on it. And so I started to understand pretty quickly that the metaphysics of most great ideas into the real world are through a visual representation on paper initially, but then in CAD, and now on iPads, and as I got further and further into that, and then as I sort of stepped out of executive management with a large Australian company and into consulting, I realised that I built a very strong reputation for complex and contentious facilitation. So, the government, for example, would say to me, we're going to put 200 people in a room who are at war with each other over an issue, but they hate us. They're universally aligned in their hatred for us as government. You've got them for 2 hours. Can you get them to agree? And I just discovered that, if you frustrate a group of people for 3/4 of the available time, you build enough energy in the room for them to want to solve the problem. So for 90 minutes of a 2-hour meeting, if you just frustrate the room, and that's easy to do, you just listen to everybody equally. That's the easiest thing to do, because no one wants everyone else in the room listened to equally to them. And so as the facilitator, you go, well, that's a good idea, I'll capture that. Oh, that's a good idea, I'll capture that. You just listen to everyone equally, they all get frustrated. And then if you walk to a whiteboard and say, I think I can draw this, there's something magical in that phrase, I think I can draw this, it draws people in. And I would start to draw a model. Now, really all I've been doing for the first 3/4 of the time is figuring out what the geometry of the model is. Geometry is kind of magical. The world is mathematical. I used to teach, my second career was in education. I used to teach, physics, chemistry. And the world is geometric. And so I'd be figuring out what is the geometry of this thing we're talking about. And I would put the geometry onto the whiteboard and then facilitate the content of the model, the words, from the room over the last 30 minutes. Because now no one wants to leave that room without this thing being resolved because they're frustrated. And so at the end we'd have this model and people go, that's it, that's the answer. Like, why didn't you give us that at the start? And I go, well, you had to build it, right? Now, I had a view of what the model would be at the start, but I need to get the collective thinking to a drawing on paper or whiteboard for them to turn it into a thing.
So I can see this in my mind's eye. Indeed, this is how I imagined you discovering your skill, probably on a stage with a whiteboard, a marker. But what's really exciting about that is that when you're doing that at the end, they might be saying, why didn't you do that at the beginning? And you say, well, no, you did it. There is part of the person's brain when you're drawing something or building a model in front of them that it's not just you presenting, it's together you are building something, and the person that you're speaking with seems to have just so much more buy-in because you built it together while drawing it.
Yeah, absolutely. But you still have control. So for example, and when I said I would choose the geometry gives you, like, a triangle says there's 3 dimensions to this. And if we don't get all 3 right, people, the whole thing collapses. Right? Now, if we get these 3 dimensions right, those 3 dimensions could produce outcomes on the apex. And so, if we get these 3 dimensions right, we could get these 3 outcomes. And those 3 outcomes could give us a big gain in the middle. So if we get these 3 dimensions right and these 3 outcomes produced by those dimensions, we can get a big shift into the middle, right? And are there additional aspects of those dimensions, that we could unpack that tell us how to make those dimensions occur? All of a sudden, without putting a single word on paper, I've shaped an entire conversation. Or I could say, look, there's 3 parts to this. If we got all 3 in place, that'd be pretty fantastic. But, at least if we got 2 in place, that would work. Or, there's kind of 2 dimensions in play, the horizontal from A to B and the vertical from 1 to 2. And A plus 1 equals this, A plus 2 equals that, 1 plus B equals that, and 2 plus B equals that. If this bit down here is not good and the bit up the top is great, how do we move from here to here? Basically, do we have to go through this pathway, or do we have to go through this pathway? And what if we really wanted high levels of performance and we just wanted this super zone up here? And so without uttering a word, I've used geometry to shape everything that the room is about to say. So I'm completely in control of the conversation, but people put their words into the model, and it's very hard for people to disagree with something they helped build, because then they've got to contradict themselves, right? And so I just realised there are three dimensions to this that I started to unpack. Why do models work? So if I go, the first one is geometry. And geometry tells you how many dimensions are in play. And so I will often spend a lot of time thinking about how many dimensions are in play, and then what is the dynamic. So as I said, a triangle says all three sides have to exist, otherwise it collapses. A continuum is from A to B. The 2x2 matrix is a comparative geometry. The geometry has dynamic. Then, of course, there's the content of the model, the words you put in there. Now, they contain two things: context. So context is, why does this thing matter? Interestingly, context is usually the first thing that leaves the conversation in a sale. Yet, it is the thing that makes the sale. But salespeople tend to get to detail too fast, and the context disappears. But then the other dimension is, what is the concept that you're trying to capture in the model? So in that previous example, I said, hey, there's three dimensions, but it's going to deliver three outcomes. The other thing is, a lot of people look at geometry and they don't use all the spaces. There's some famous three-circle Venn diagrams used by some very well-known writers, and they haven't filled in the overlaps between the circles. Well, that makes it a triangle, not a Venn diagram, right? So, but the third component that I really kind of uncovered was with models was choreography. So choreography is about pathway and punchline, and what I call the punchline effect. So the real secret to the models isn't just coming up with the model, it's coming up with the way to deliver the model. So it's not just a flat image on paper. And what do I mean by that? I studied stage magic and comedy to figure out how to deliver models more effectively and be a better keynote speaker and things like that. And there's some really interesting psychology in magic and comedy. So the magician's best friend is perspective. So a magician that's going to do a show will go out on the stage before the audience is there and put their arms out either side and look down their arms, line their fingers up with the edges of where the audience is, look down their arms to make sure it's lined up. Now, everything behind their arms can't be seen by the audience. So it's open slather with what they do behind them. So if they're wearing a big coat, they can conceal stuff behind them in hidden pockets. They can hold their hand in front of the audience. The audience can't see what's behind their hand, so they'll have a card tucked in their fingers at the back. So when they go, the card appears, it's just a skill exercise then. So it's perspective. And, the idea of a joke or a magic trick is you have the pathway, the build-up, the setup, right? And what that's doing is that's allowing the audience to sit inside the paradigm that they know exists. Because when we're selling, or in business, or we're leading a team, most of the time what we're trying to do is challenge someone's paradigm and get them to adopt a new paradigm. That's what conversion is. We talk about conversion like it's a mechanical process. I'd love to draw a model for you in a minute that explains exactly what conversion is. But conversion is the person collapses their paradigm and accepts yours. That's what it is, right? And so you've got this thing happening over here where the joke or the magic trick is doing a setup inside the paradigm that they're comfortable with. And then in a nanosecond, you collapse that paradigm and introduce a new paradigm. It has to happen fast. And that's the punchline or the reveal, right?
And it's actually what it also does is it breaks our guessing machines.
Correct.
So our brains are like set up. We're expecting something. We're expecting something. But from an evolutionary perspective, if we're walking through the jungle and we're looking at the green grass and we're seeing the green grass, seeing the green grass, seeing the green grass, and then suddenly we see the green grass has an eye,
Yes.
our whole brain goes into laser focus.
Yes.
Which is why this punchline or the plot twist at the end of the movie, suddenly it turns out that Bruce Willis was dead all along. He was a ghost. Suddenly we have the presenter has our complete and undivided attention.
Yeah.
Because we've broken someone's guessing machine.
Well, if we think about this from an emotional state perspective, right? The paradigm that, and we just talk about sales, the paradigm that someone usually comes to a sales conversation with generally has some level of fear or chaos attached to it. Like, I've got this paradigm I'm not happy with and I need to solve it, but I don't know how, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the capability, which leads them into chaos, to think that, oh, the world's kind of chaotic. And, chaos isn't actually that real. I'll address that in a minute. But we need to collapse that paradigm of chaos. We need to actually allow them to feel comfortable with it initially, and then we want to collapse it and in a nanosecond replace it with another paradigm. That one of the most productive emotional states that you can put somebody into is curiosity. It's really hard to be negative and unhappy when you're in a place of curiosity. So if we can collapse the chaos paradigm and in a nanosecond replace it with a curiosity paradigm, we're well on the way to the sale, right? And so we have this setup over here: chaos, 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 collapse, curiosity. Now, you can't get to curiosity if you go, let me understand what's happening for you. Okay, now let me explain what it could be like. You can't do an incremental explanation. So you go chaos, 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 let me understand what's happening for you. Collapse, I have a model that would solve that. And they go, a model? Yeah, I've got a practical, proven framework that would solve that. And here's what's going on in the brain. The right and left hemisphere of the brain are completely separate hemispheres, only connected by neurology and transmitters, right? And the right brain is largely, visual representation. It's more creative. It views our being as a part of the energy of the universe. The left brain is more linguistic and logical, and it views us as separate to the universe. And the two work together to help us have our place in the world, right? Very interesting talk. I saw a neuroscientist had a brain aneurysm in her left hemisphere. And she knew it was happening because she was really clear about the symptoms. It was at home while she was getting ready to go to work, lives on her own. She had a golf ball-sized clot in the left hemisphere. So the left hemisphere was just completely failing on her, and then it had snapped back into play. Now what the left hemisphere is trying to say is, hey, you are an individual in the world, and I need to make sure you're safe and everything else. The right hemisphere is going, you are part of the whole thing, and it's all visual. When the left hemisphere stopped functioning because of the clot, she could not tell the difference between where her hand ended and where the wall started. Her right hemisphere is just seeing her visually as a part of the whole, which meant it was unsafe for her to be at the top of stairs, for example. Then the left hemisphere would come back online and again and go, hang on, you're in trouble here. Some serious stuff happening, right?
How did she get herself to hospital?
Well, she talks through the whole thing. But she had to try and dial one of her work colleagues, but she couldn't make sense of the numbers, so she's trying to match up the squiggly lines and things like that. But the two hemispheres of the brain obviously have neurology that connects them. But when you're trying to sell to somebody, you need to speak to both sides of the brain. You need to show them the big picture, visually representative of what is possible, but you need to show them how they can fit into that, right? So one of the things I realize is that you put a visual model in front of somebody's brain. It's like a sense-making machine that connects the two hemispheres of the brain. And they don't have to do the work. So when you're saying to somebody, they're going chaos, 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 you go, I've got a model that will fix that. People intuitively know something interesting is going to be coming, and the curiosity paradigm turns on. Show me the model. And when you say things like, I can draw that for you, curiosity paradigm turns on and they're drawn in. And you know, because chaos is not real. Everything has a pattern. And, you know, to prove that, I started wondering, what's the most random thing I could think of? And then I thought, luck. Luck's pretty random. Does luck have patterns? Turns out it does. You know, so we started entering competitions, sweepstakes, win a car, win a trip, stuff like that. And, you know, to date, we've won over $1.5 million worth of prizes. When we were doing it more seriously, like 10 hours a week, prizes would turn up every day. We'd win on average about $50,000 worth of prizes a year. We've won 2 family trips to Disney World in Florida, two trips to London, multiple trips around Australia, you know, walked over the top of Sydney Harbour Bridge. We've won cars, we've won televisions. The TV stations put my wife on TV. They call her Australia's competition queen. And, you know, Christmas time, they'll say, come and get on breakfast television and tell people how to shop for Christmas and win stuff, you know. You know, my daughter supplied all her own stuff when she was growing up, bikes, you know, game stations, iPods and things like that, by winning it. Like our daughters wouldn't say, hey, I want a new computer. They'd say, if you see a competition for a computer, let me know. Because it has patterns and it's repeatable. We can teach other people. And we could, if we taught people what to do, they'd usually win an international trip within 3 months. Because chaos is not real. The world is very ordered at a nature level. And the only thing that makes something chaotic is when someone personally can't see the patterns inside it. And what models do is give people a sense of order and pattern and structure. So they're very powerful.
So you did mention the 2 bits. You said fear and chaos. And it's, I mean, like what you described is very interesting. We have our own models for teaching people how to sell. You start a call during the discovery bit. The discovery bit is to ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
Probably help the future customer or client unpack their chaos. And then we say, exactly as you said, we've got a framework that we use to help target audience go from A to B. I don't say, would you like me to draw it for you? But I'm now going to say that. I would say, would you like to see it? And people always say yes and lean right in every time. And you hear people saying on sales, oh, you need to get yes and all the other stuff as much as possible. No, you need to get permission. You need to get agreement. Yes is just a word. But if you can get people to lean in, that's great. What you said, fear and chaos. Are these interwoven here? Is the framework going to dissolve the fear or mitigate it in some way?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we think about results over time, for example, people want certainty. So, and in order to have certainty, they want status quo. They want to stay the same. People live in certainty, and that makes them safe, right? We all only sell 2 things, James. People want to be made safe. They don't want to behave safely. Like they want to drive too fast, drink and smoke, do silly things, but they want someone or something else to make them safe. The first thing we all sell is safety. The second thing we all sell is people want to win. No one wants an average car or an average house or an average business. Like if you said, hey, you know, I'm a health professional, I can help you have average health. No one's going to buy from you, right? People want to win. They might not want to admit that, but they want to win. We all sell 2 things. We make people safe, we help them win. So people want to stay inside status quo for safety. But they also understand that out here is this thing called opportunity and growth. And the problem is there's this space in between status quo and growth called chaos. And the reason the status quo is because we understand all the patterns in there. We know what's going on. But out in chaos, we don't know what the patterns are. They're kind of all over the place. We can't make sense of it. And the human brain is a sense-making machine. And because we can't understand the patterns, we view it as chaotic, right? But the problem is all progress lives on the far side of chaos. All progress lives on the far side of chaos. And when you're selling to someone, what you're selling to them is progress. They have to change something in order to get the benefit of what you sell. Even if it's a physical product, a new TV, they've got to learn how to use it, right? If it's a developmental product, personal growth, business growth, or whatever, they've got to change even more. So every sale is selling a person progress, but they intuitively understand that progress lives on the far side of chaos, and they're going to have to go through chaos to do it. And so a big part of the sale is, am I even willing to enter into that chaos in order to have that progress and to get to that progress? And so we have to be able to offer somebody something that gets them into this chaos, this fear. Now, big lesson here, chaos is just another word is code for ambiguity, which means what they don't understand. And all the value, all the real value that you get paid a premium for is in the ambiguity. You know, if we think about 100% of a product being sold, 80% of that has you using all the same tools, tactics, techniques, and technologies as everybody else. The 20% that is your unique perspective is where all the money comes from. It's your unique perspective on how you curate and put together the 80% that makes your uniqueness. And so we what we do is we notice the connections of the discrete pieces inside the chaos. And it's that noticing and that awareness of connections between that turns chaos into patterns. And so this line is super interesting. To get people to enter into chaos, you must create safety. They won't go into the chaos with you. And then to get people to want to buy the progress on the other side, you need to show that as a real innovation that can take them there. Now, here's the thing. I'm not sure that I agree, and I know you had a point, but I'll just finish this off. I'm not 100% sure that I agree that selling is best done asking the customer a whole lot of questions. We generally do that so that we can make the sale. But if I need neurosurgery, I don't need the surgeon to be asking me a whole lot of questions about me. I just need the neurosurgeon to prove to me that he knows what the symptoms are telling him is happening. I just need proof. So he might ask me a bunch of questions about the symptoms, but I need him to do that to prove that he knows what's going on. I don't need him to ask a bunch of questions and then say, wow, I've never seen this before. I'm so excited. No, I want him to go, I know. Let me draw what's going to happen. Let me show you a picture of the human brain and let me draw what's going to happen. So there's real fear or anxiety in the chaos and the ambiguity, but that's where all the value lives. And so you've got to offer safety. Now, here's what a model does. It takes away the need for you to lean on your own ego and talk about how good you are, and it allows you to assign all the ego to the model and let them realize how powerful the model is.
Which is a model you've created anyway.
Yeah, correct. And it allows them to go, well, if the model's that powerful, how good must you be? But you don't have to tell them that. But also they can go, that model makes sense because it's this neuroconnector between the right and left hemisphere of the brain that connects logic to visual and big picture. And they go, okay, that you must know the patterns. This is all happening at a psychological level. You must know the patterns inside that chaotic ambiguity, because you could never have built a framework that's cohesive if you didn't. There's just a lot going on.
So I'm just going to do time out for anyone that's listening to this as a podcast. If you're listening to this as a podcast, what you need to do is you need to go jump onto YouTube and you need to watch this on YouTube, because a moment ago, Simon ran through a diagram and he drew this diagram on the screen. And you can immediately see the impact that this can have, whether you're speaking from the stage or whether you're running a webinar or whether you're having a sales call over Zoom and you need to make a case. It's really interesting. Before, when you were talking about your electronics background and you were talking about circuits, the interesting thing about circuits is, and this is the same with programming, your job when you do a circuit or programming is to get the message or get the path happening from A to B. That's what it is. We've got the A state over here, we've got the B state over there.
Yeah.
When it comes to the diagrams, is that something that you're using as well?
Yeah, it is. Interesting. I'm going to draw again.
What a surprise.
It's interesting. If you look at the digital sine wave, it looks like this, right? Actually, I'll make that a bit smaller so that it's not hiding behind the photo of me. It looks like this. That's the digital sine wave, right? On and off. And there's no time between the cut. So the cut over from on and off has zero time. And so in a circuit diagram or any electronic circuit, it's pure logic. It's if and or logic, right? If this happens, that must happen. If this and that happens, if this or that happens, this must happen. So it's pure logic. It's on and or off. In a TV, you've got a picture or you've got blue screen on a television. But humans are analog. The purple sine wave is analog. The old television that I remember in my youth had a lot of grey and sort of snow, and particularly if you had the internal TV antenna and someone had to hold it in a weird way to get the perfect picture if there was a sporting event on. There's only two conditions where you've got on and off, but you've got all this grayscale in between, right? So humans are analog, living in a digital world. And the places where sales and communication go wrong is in these spaces in between the on-off condition of a digital world where humans are actually still forming an opinion and experiencing emotion. So if you think about a speaker on stage, they almost always walk out on stage and they're using PowerPoint. Now PowerPoint is a digital medium. Click, next bit, click, next bit, click, next bit, right? And often the audience doesn't keep up. I walk out on stage with an iPad in my hand and draw on blank sheets of paper on my iPad or blank screens on my iPad, which are projected up to the big screen on the TV. And I've spoken at lots of conferences. I did one recently in Asia, hundreds of people in the room. I was there for the full conference, and I'm looking at the audience, and every speaker had chunks of the audience on their phone while they're speaking.
Yeah, wow.
I walked out on stage with my iPad and started drawing, and after about 5 minutes, I stopped and I said, folks, have a look around the room. No one is on their phone. And the reason why is because you are an analog group of people seeing an analog presentation. You're watching me draw. Drawing draws people in. And what the drawing is doing is allowing your brain time to go through the range of analog change that I want it to go through, right? But the other thing that's happening is this. If I can draw this on a blank screen, I know my stuff. I'm not using a PowerPoint to prompt me. I know what I'm going to draw and I know what I'm going to talk about. So I have an instantly different level of credibility than if I'd come out here with PowerPoint and tried to explain this. And I don't have any arrogance about it, but I know if I go and speak at a conference, I am going to be the most remembered speaker because I'm also the only one drawing on my iPad for a start, So we have this interesting paradigm where we've got analog humans living in a digital world and we're trying to force digital marketing and digital strategies onto them, but they're still buying analog. They're still going through the full range. And so, so what does that mean, the full range of emotion? If I'm going to get that neurosurgery, I want the surgeon to say, I had to have cataract surgery about 5 years ago. So lens replacement inside your eyes, right? And I get referred to the ophthalmologist. And he says, so, you're having vision problems? I said, yeah, I wore glasses, trifocal glasses all day. And I went, yeah, they're not working well. I said, no, that's right, because you've got cataracts. So we need to take the cataracts out. And I said, okay, how's that work? And he said, well, we're going to, it's surgery. We're going to put a little incision in the side of your eyeball. I'm going to go in there with a laser. I'm going to smash up the lens in your eye. It'll be like fireworks while I smash it up. You'll be awake for this. Then we're going to suck the lens out and you'll go blind because without the lens you can't see anything. And then we're going to pop a prosthetic lens into your eye, which will be rolled up because I put it through the small incision. It will pop open or put it into position and you'll be able to see. And we'll do one eye first and we'll put a long lens in that eye, and then we'll do the other eye 2 weeks later. We'll put a short lens in that eye, and your brain will be able to work out the difference and you won't need to wear glasses at all. How's that sound? And I went, I didn't hear anything after I'm going to smash up your lens. And he said, yeah, and this is obviously his sport for him, right? He does this deliberately. He said, yeah, I know it sounds pretty traumatic, but seriously, it's a 7-minute operation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's done while you're awake, and we'll have an anaesthetist there with some anxiety medication if you get squeamish about these things. But he said also a lot of people say it's a pretty amazing experience. And he said, here's the most important question you should ask any surgeon. Any surgeon. You shouldn't ask them how many of these surgeries have you done. It's the wrong question. You should ask them, how many of these surgeries have you done last week? Better question.
Yeah, because they're
he said, I did,
at the top of their
yeah,
game.
yeah. He said, I did 15 of these last week. I do 500 a year.
Yeah.
I've never had a failure.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, that's that. He knows I'm going through this analog range of emotions, and then he, you know, remember, paradigm, chaos, 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 collapse it. You know, you should ask how many of these have you done last week, and immediately in my brain I go, okay, he's willing to put his reputation on the line, and we need to be able to do that as we're taking people through this journey, whether it's a sale or a team member that we want to get, you know, aligned with what we're trying to do, your teenage son or daughter, you know, a politician you're trying to influence. We've got to be experts at communication to close that perception gap.
So I want to see maybe one or two of your favorite styles of diagram or geometry, as you might call them.
Sure.
But in particular, I know that our audience should be aware of your genius model.
Yeah.
Because I know that most of our audience would have seen some variation of it somewhere, and they might not have attributed it to you the same way that I didn't.
Yeah, sure. So, I don't know how we're going for time. I'm leaving that as your responsibility. Okay. but I do want, what I'd love to do first is just explain what conversion really is. You know, what sales conversion is. And this might help people kind of sharpen their conversion a bit more. Humans have intensity, and they have high intensity or low intensity. And so over time and effort, we want to sell to somebody. We want to convert them, right? Now, it might not be a sale in a business sense. It could be converting someone just to an idea in the family or whatever. And humans have a high intensity for resistance. We have an automatic system for saying no. And the reason we have that is it protects us, right? So, you know, someone goes into a shop, the shop assistant says, may I help you? And they say, no, thanks, just looking. Now, everybody that's worked retail knows how frustrating that is, because a few minutes later, that same person will come to you and say, do you have one of these things? And it's usually while you're serving someone else and they're hanging around. Why didn't they just ask for help because we're hardwired for resistance. Now, that in itself is not particularly unique, but if you add to that we have a low intensity for acceptance. We're not good at saying yes. So you do something amazing and somebody says to you, oh, you're incredible. I can't tell you how appreciative I am. Thank you so much. You go, oh, it was nothing. We're not good at acceptance, right? And so the gap, the perception gap between resistance and acceptance that exists automatically in people is what we're trying to close when we're trying to convert. Conversion is what happens in this moment when the curves reverse. That's what conversion actually is. The conversion to an idea is what happens when someone's resistance and acceptance curves invert on each other, and you pop out the other side over here where you're no longer selling, you're just facilitating, right? In here, you're selling. And what a lot of people do to try and make this happen sooner, because we want to sell to our agenda, not theirs. We want to make this happen faster, is you create more pressure. You use pressure-based selling. Now, if you put pressure inside a closed cylinder, it pushes the sides further apart. It doesn't bring them together. And I just happened to recognize, I didn't happen to, a lot of kind of testing and everything else. If you put a visual model in front of somebody, something like the Genius model, which is this 3-circle Venn diagram with 9 segments around the outside, if you put a model in front of somebody, they very rapidly move to this moment where the curves invert, because you've collapsed chaos, replaced it with curiosity, and said, what if we had a model for that? I could draw that for you. Oh, that's interesting. The acceptance curve has started to go up, the resistance curve has started to come down, and as the two of you, instead of going head to head with that resistance in the middle, as the two of you look at the model together, you're actually building this thing between you. These curves continue to reverse. Now, the Genius model, this 3-circle Venn diagram, is really, the idea here is we're capturing the genius of the organization, of the business. We're actually saying to the marketplace, this is the big $1 million promise that we bring to the marketplace, driven by these outcomes that we know we can make happen for everybody, no matter what. That's the context. We have a concept for how we make that happen, kind of 3 legs of a stool, and then the rubber hits the road in these areas of capability that we can execute. So it doesn't matter what product or service we sell underneath that Genius model, you can rely on all of them, because the underlying genius of the organization is sound. And I do have a model called the Origins of Genius. I've studied where organizational genius comes from. A big chunk of it comes from the founder, which is a problem when people want to step back from the business, and have the business run itself. You start to lose the heritage wisdom of the founder that has fueled the Genius model in the first place. But the shift in selling there is sell the genius of the company, not the products and services. Products and services commoditize you. The genius of the company is that 20% perspective that has you curate and utilize the 80% that everyone else is also using, but in a wildly different way. But for the purpose of your audience, and I'll do this after you've asked your question, there's a simple model I'd love to leave them with, which everyone could be using today, which will increase their sales. But I'll let you you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, so there's a couple elements to this that I just wanted to highlight. One of those things is, and I'm curious about you, Simon, how do you serve your clients? You've got some clients that work with you personally, and there's other clients that can buy your training. You would have different levels, which really comes down to access to you, yeah?
Yeah. So, we work with what I call the OGs of a marketplace. Now, for me, OGs are not the original gangsters in the street
rap parlance.
Yeah, the street version of it, right? To me, an OG is someone who brings original genius to a market. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at the heritage brands like Ferrari and Chanel and things like that, the founder brought an original level of genius to the marketplace, a perspective that caused them to view the same. Everyone uses the same tools, techniques, strategies and technology to build a motor car, but Ferrari brought a perspective to it, caused them to create an iconic brand, right? And so these OGs have infused this founder wisdom into the company that has lived all the way through the company. Richard Branson is the OG, and the founder wisdom is all the way through the Virgin group of companies. But what happens when that founder wisdom is no longer there and we're 2 or 3 generations down the track? No doubt Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak injected the founder wisdom into Apple. And Apple has genius as a company because of it. But Steve Jobs is no longer with us. Now, Tim Cook worked directly with him. So we're in the first generation post Steve Jobs. Is it the same company as it once was under Steve Jobs? And then when Tim Cook is no longer at the helm, how is that founder wisdom being contained inside the company genius, right? So, we work with people who know that a part of their legacy isn't just that the company keeps running, so succession planning for the company. The real part of their legacy is how do I have this original genius that I brought to the marketplace succeed in the second and third generation? And the answer is you capture that inside a genius model. You create a blueprint for it that can be passed down. So we work one-to-one in private consultancies with companies that understand the power of that. They want speed when they're working. They don't want to watch a pile of video content to learn how to do it. They want to jump on Zoom with me and just have me pull this genius out of them. And so I jump on Zoom, and in not that many meetings, I can capture the entire genius of a company in a model that you can walk through in 7 to 10 minutes. If you are selling warships to the US Navy, and you're standing in front of the procurement team, you're saying, here's how we build and sustain warships in battle, and you walk through a genius model that takes 7 to 10 minutes, and the most senior officer says, how come no one else can explain it that simply for us? That's the moment you access a multi-million-dollar deal. But if you're a sole practice accountant, and you've codified your genius into a model, you go, hey, listen, yeah, of course, we're talking about tax, financial planning, we're talking, financial integrity and management and cash flow, and of course we're talking about all that sort of stuff. Let me show you how I think about accounting. And then they move into their genius model. You've instantly separated from everybody else. And so we work one-to-one for those people that want that fast track and direct access, and they don't want to watch videos to learn how to do it, right? They want it pulled out of them. And then we also have a group-based solution where people do come, and my goal with the group-based program is I actually secretly want to turn people into models-based thinkers and communicators. So we help them build the course.
That's what you've done for me, Simon.
Yeah. Isn't it? There's this moment, right, when your brain switches on, and you go, every time you're thinking about something, your first thought is, can I build a model for that?
Every time I'm in a position to communicate with someone, immediately is like, what's going to be the best way to present this as a visual model?
Absolutely. And people see me live in front of an audience building a model on the fly, and they all want to be able to do that. And I know that we can get people to that point. We can teach that. So in the group-based program, people come and hang out with us. They're with us for 12 months, but up front, in like the first 8 weeks, we build the 5 key models that live in the models-based selling system. Now, the genius model is also a delivery model. So when you show people your genius model in the sale, and then they come inside your solution as a paying client, the first thing you show them is, here's the model. Remember, this is what we're going to do. Now they've got this direct connection between what you sold me is what you're going to give me. And so we build the models really intentionally, but then we actually want people to become, behind the curtains, models-based thinkers and influencers, model-based thinkers and communicators. And then we do have a very entry-level. It doesn't build the genius model, but it gives you a models-based sales conversation. So it's specifically focused on the conversion conversation for those people that aren't ready yet to let me codify my genius and really start to think about how I shift the way I show up. It's an entry-level offering. All of this is at modelsmethod.com. But it's, even to shift your conversion conversation to a models-based conversation will change the way you convert.
And whether you like it or not, Simon, I'll find a way to put a link underneath this video or somewhere where people can get onto your newsletter or download a free resource or whatever it's going to be. But the reason why I asked the question is that Simon brought up the genius model on the screen, and then I wanted to bring it to you, not just to showcase different ways that people can work with Simon, but the idea being is that when you can codify all this stuff in your brain, you can work with clients privately and you can get paid the big bucks. Or you can work with groups, you get paid less, but you're leveraging your time more effectively. Or you can go down one level again and you can sell, you can productize your knowledge and sell it to the masses. The other bit, and you might not even be aware of this might have not have entered your world, but the other reason why I love the genius model, and can you bring it up for one more second back on the screen? Here we've got like 3 circles, and if you get those 3 circles together, you can get a big outcome. That's the light blue in the middle, right? But around the edge, there are, for each of these pieces of the puzzle, 3 things to get right, or 3 outcomes that people are seeking, whichever way you want to do it. There are these 3 elements across for each of these circles. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, me and my world, Simon, I spend a lot of time creating content. I spend a lot of time teaching my people how to create content. I spend a lot of time trying to teach my people how to engage with their audiences continuously, even when they're not around. How to extract their lightning. What did you call it? Their original genius.
Yeah.
Put it in a bottle, and it's really hard to put lightning in a bottle. But here's the thing: if we have 3 things, which are the orange circles, and then we have 3 things for each of those orange circles, which are the light green components, that works out to be 1, 2, 3 plus 9 equals 12. That gives us 12 things that we can talk about. If there are 4 weeks to a month, that there is 3 months, which is a quarter of a year. I don't know anyone that hasn't gone through this process and then hasn't created stuff to talk about and reasons to communicate with their audiences for at least a quarter. And then the other cool thing about that is that at the end of the quarter, you just rinse and repeat. Because no one's got a memory above 3 months.
Well, in fact, every month I do a 20-minute teaching. It's been one of the most effective marketing strategies we've come up with. I kind of got sick of doing, the 1-hour webinar, masterclass style. And I thought, I want my own TED Talk. And so every month I'm going to do a 20-minute teaching. So we don't do a big marketing push. There's no registration. We put it into social media about a week before we market it to our list. And it's just a calendar invite. So there's no registration page. We don't need any information from you up front. Take this link, click on it, just come into our Zoom room. When the room is full, it's full. We have a large meeting room. When the room's full, it's full. So first in, best dressed. And I actually have a 20-minute timer running. And people know that I'm going to end at 20 minutes, right? Only way you can get the replays if you show up live. And so, because we want live people in the room. And people have told us that they get more content out of that 20-minute teaching than they get out of any of the 1-hour masterclasses that they do. But what's my 20-minute teaching based on? The first one of the year is based on that part, which happens to be the heart of the model. The second one of the year is based on that, which happens to be the bit that gives you the heart of the model. The third one of the year is that first accelerator. The second one, which we just delivered yesterday, is the second accelerator. The third one is that one. So I've done 11 months of teaching, and what I've been doing the whole time without actually telling anyone is putting my company genius in front of them. So and there are layers inside here, inside each of these capability pieces. So you don't just have a quarter or even a year of content and product, you have years of content and product. And there's a model that everybody should be using in selling called the futures model. This will change everybody's sales results immediately if they start using it. The client comes to you for a solution and you may have spoken through what you do, but there is that moment where you have to get them to take action. Right, and then so we've got all these crazy false scarcity and urgency type things. Only while the offer, only while this offer is live, only before the end of the week, etc., which is all salesperson urgency and doesn't mean anything. But if you said to somebody, look, as we sit here today, we both know that time always wins, and at some sort of passing of time, whether it's 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, you will find yourself in your future circumstance. Now, this is all deliberately crafted choreography that I'm working through at the moment. You will find yourself in the future circumstance, and people say you can't predict the future, but actually I can. I can tell you your future will either be ideal and fantastic, or your future will be crisis. There is an amber zone that could sit in the middle through here, but in reality, it's either going to be red or green. And people think that the pathway to the future is a straight line, but it's not. The pathway down to crisis is a curve, because the second thing that time does, in addition to time always winning, the second thing that time does is it compounds everything. And so if you drift, and what is drift? Well, drift is you don't make a decision, you don't take action, you don't listen to the environment around you. If you drift always heads downwards. But time also compounds the positive upwards. And what is that? That's informed decisions and action. If you take informed decisions and you act against them, the curve heads upwards for you. And the reality is that people that come to me and talk to me feel like they're at this point already where the gap is too big. How could I possibly jump that? It feels scary, it's chaos. But right now in this moment, you're as close to that green line as you're ever going to be. The past doesn't matter because it's already gone. The future isn't here yet. And right now in this moment, punchline, you're as close to that green line as you're ever going to be. I have a proven framework that I've built that will put you on that green line within about 30, 60, 90 days, whatever your first stage solution is. That almost always requires some kind of cleanup or reset. But my proven framework, my proven methodology will put you on that green line. The first thing I do with people is put them on the green line. And then the second thing the framework has been built to do is to keep you on that green line and have you ride the curve. Here's the thing, no one falls off the green line, everyone just behaves their way off the green line. And our framework's been built to prevent that from happening. And so whatever this looks like for you out here in the future, what I can guarantee you is that we know what gateways we've got to walk through along that pathway to get there, and we've got the framework to do it. So, you know, I could say to you this is only available while the offer is live. I could say to you this is only available until the end of the week at this price point. I could say to you that you have to make a decision right now, but I'm not interested in all of that because the only urgency that matters is yours. And the question is, you know, leave it 6 months, the gap is bigger, leave it another 12 months, the gap is bigger. The question is, how long do you want to wait before you get on the green line? And when you're ready to make that decision, we're going to be able to help you. If you're not ready to make that decision, nothing anyone will do will put you on the green line. So when you're ready for that decision, let us know. I mean, it's such a low key, low pressure, it's all your decision way of selling. That one model will shift everyone's numbers.
I felt like saying, here's my credit card, take my money. Without even knowing what it is that you've got to sell. But,
well, I mean, that's important though, James. I actually haven't taken you through my genius model. I've just told you I've got one.
True.
And the model will put you on the green line, and it will keep you there. And how long are you going to let those compounding effects in the opposite directions work? And now, if you're a business owner, right, and I wanted to bring more heat to it, I'd say, James, your real risk is if you're on the red line, your nearest competitor's on the green line, because that compounds them even more. So, you know, if you want to have access to the framework we put in place to show people how to think and sell through powerful visual models that will completely transform everything about your business, I can do that for you. But it's your choice about when. And the futures model is the answer to that. So, you know, that will change people's numbers. That one model, if people take anything out of this call, we have a big footprint in the financial planning world. We have a big footprint in SaaS and tech. Financial planners can draw that and turn a 1 hour meeting into 15 minutes. If you drew that up front in the first 15 minutes and you're talking about someone's financial future, and we've done this, we've tested this. The client goes, well, I want to start now. And in Australia, at least, the financial planners say, well, there's regulations. I've got to explain a bunch of stuff to you. I've got to take you through some things. But yeah, let's start now and build a plan, you know?
There is that key word today. There's always like, you know, but if you wanted to start today, we'd need to do this. Or start today. Now, this was very meta. I mean, like it always is when you speak with Simon, because he's demonstrating what he does while he's also selling what he does. It's fantastic. So if you are interested in what Simon does and you want to get part of his world, as I said, there will be a link somewhere around this. I don't know what's going to be on the other side of that link, but you know it's going to be freaking awesome. I don't want to keep you any longer. I'm very lucky and I feel very privileged to have so much of your time. But any final words of advice or wisdom for anyone listening or watching this?
Well, I don't know if they're words of advice or wisdom, rather than more of a challenge. So, my own internal game I'm playing with the world. You know, we are in an interesting stage as a species. I don't know about you, but I don't feel wildly impressed with leadership around the world right now. And I am very interested in the concept of time, and I'm very interested in the concept of multi-generational stewardship. You know, if we are just caretakers of what we have in front of us right now, what are we doing to leave it in better shape, right? And I think one of the most powerful forces we've got on the planet is actually free enterprise. But it needs to be led well. And if free enterprise is one of the most powerful forces we've got on the planet, then business should be noble, and selling should be one of the most noble things we do. The ophthalmologist only gives me new vision and new lenses if he can make the sale that I get it done. The heart surgeon can only do the surgery to prevent a heart attack if he can make the sale to get it done. And so, you know, I think we're in a period of time right now where business leaders, business founders, you know, we've got so much conversation about find your why and business for good and everything else. All of that's great, but often done for marketing purposes. But if your business is truly noble and it makes a big difference, you will invest your time in making selling the most noble thing your business does. That means how you market, the messages you go to market with, and that means you would do everything you possibly could to put your solution, your genius, in your customers' hands. If your genius truly is unique and your 20% perspective makes a massive difference, it's game-changing for them, you would do everything you can, but you would do it in a way that's truly noble. You know, their urgency is the only urgency that matters. Use visual models. Make it very transparent for them. The greater the transparency, the safer they feel. And in fact, one of the things I'll do, James, is give you a link for a mini training. I think it's 3 videos in the series around this concept I coined called buyer safety, where you can build your marketing sales funnels so the customer feels safer with you at every step of the way than they would be with anyone else, because we're selling safety and how to win. And that will also give people the opportunity to opt into the early notification list for that 20-minute teaching that I do every month, which is all content. And give, you know, it's just 20 minutes, and there's always great stuff out of that, and I'm drawing all the way through it. So, but what's the final bit of wisdom? You know, make selling the most noble thing you do. It really is a superpower to change the world.
I just think that idea of that it's our responsibility as leaders to be genuine leaders and to pass on our genius to the next generation and the next generation. Use the word custodian. It's not just about the environment, although the environment's very important. It's not just about our kids, although they're super important as well too. It's what we do great as a species when we are our best, and that's when we're using our genius to make the world a better place. And we're not being selfish about it. We're using it in ways that we can become abundantly wealthy and rich, but we can also share that abundance. So on that kind of high-level note, Simon, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of my podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on.